Good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? It is a Thursday in early August 2022. It is August 4th, and that means I have just completed my 50th journey around the star our planet calls home. Uh, Turned 50 today, guys. It's kind of a crazy day. Psychologically, 50 is a bit of a hill. 30 wasn't much of nothing. 40 kind of breezed by me. 50 has a little bit more of a that's a hill. Am I starting down the backside of that hill now? Uh, you know, I'm okay. I feel as good as I've felt in a long time, to be honest. You know, uh, Coffee shop is coming along. We're making good progress on that. Hoping to be open by October 1st. Um, if everything goes well and according to plan. So we're excited about the future. There's lots of exciting things still happening, and want to offer boutique DJ sets and boutique events, and it should be a fun new chapter. But new chapters are more difficult, I think, as you get older. Change is difficult as you get older. But it's been quite the journey. I want to say thank you to my dear friend Brian Hillstead, who I've known for 30 some years. He came up from LA to spend the last few days here with me and my brother, who turned 49 yesterday, and I turned 50 today. Uh, Someone called it Irish twins. Never heard that before, but certainly my parents were busy pretty quickly into their marriage. But yeah, 50, it's kind of a crazy thing. 50 is kind of how long I followed jazz, kind of from 1920 to 1970. Uh, I mean, I'm not trying to draw any parallels there or nothing, but 50 is a long time. It's enough to have enough experience to know that you don't know much. You know, Wisdom comes with age, and part of wisdom is the humility of knowing and recognizing all that you don't know. And I think philosophy is important because it helps you cling to some kind of belief in the face of uncertainty and in the face of a changing, crazy world. There's things that's happened in the world these last 15 years that I never would have envisioned or imagined or thought possible, from the pandemic to uh, presidents that don't belong, to a media that's so divided, to an American public that is spoon fed information that's meant to distract and create discord. I never thought I'd get to a point where education would be so stripped from the basic human rights of the people, my fellow countrymen. You know, I've been interacting with a lot of kids lately, and depression is just synonymous with almost everyone in today's generation. And I'm sure there's a pharmaceutical industry that loves that development and almost wonders if they've been pushing a curriculum of the language of depression, teaching kids hot button words that they can use at the drop of a hat as an excuse or an alibi for not achieving. Because we live in a society where achievement's not really expected anymore of most of these kids. You know, there's such a great degree of coasting and distraction. One of the great issues I have with the distraction of today's generation, staring at their screens all the time, is it's that downtime of my childhood when I was bored, where I was most creative, where I was most imaginative. It was that downtime of, oh, this sucks, I don't want to be just sitting here doing nothing all the time, where you create a plan for your life. You figure out kind of like, what do you want to do with yourself, and you go on and achieve it. And I think kids are so distracted today by trying to stay up with the most constant new gossip and the new TikTok and the new, that there's no downtime to process self, to recognize who I am and where I'm going and what, and my kids included. And one of my great failings in life has been raising my two-step kids from the time they were like 7 and 9 to the point where they're now 17 and 19. And it feels like I've had so little impact in so many ways. I thought I could get them to dream and philosophize and define spirituality and the human connection, and I know I've broadened them in some senses, but their degree of control by their devices and their games and their phones It's so beyond anything I would have ever imagined. And you can't out talk those screams. You can't out philosophize that reality, that virtual connection. And you end up with a generation of kids that has very little accomplishment or achievement in the real world. And most of their accomplishment and achievement ends up being virtual, which isn't nothing to really hang your hat on. You can't hang your hat on a virtual hook. You know, you need to grow antlers. You need to accomplish things. You need to go there and rut and grind and work hard. Hard work is the greatest achievement, and it's a gift to yourself to work hard on something, to be passionate about something, to engage in something. So it's just a milestone 50 that I'm happy to have made in one piece. There's many years of my life where that seemed like a unrealistic goal to have set, to see 50. And, you know, I'd like to see 80 in one piece and not be a collection of tubes and hoses by that time. You know, that's, you want to live a healthy life and not a life where you're strapped to a bed or something. So you want those years to be good years as best you can. But all in all, I'm thankful for my journey. It's been quite the experience, from my years in all my metal bands and hip-hop bands and rock bands over the years, in my 20s into my 30s. All my years of DJing has been a very fulfilling and enriching experience, and connecting with people. And you actually kind of learn a lot as a DJ, and just in perceiving people and reading their musical tastes and the community that they're likely to be a part of and recognize, and then trying to feed that dragon. If I know you're this, I think I know a lot of that stuff you're going to like, and it just helps you perceive culture and to broaden your empathy for various groups, and to feel that sense of connection with them was always empowering to me, regardless of race, regardless of sexuality, regardless of age. You know, it's a powerful communicator, music. And then these last 4 years doing this channel and doing the jazz on the Facebook groups as well, that's also been a very informative, enriching experience. So I want to thank all of you out there who have been a part of this journey for me these last 4 years here on YouTube. Just getting to know you guys and getting feedback and sometimes even criticism, you know, certainly not above criticism. I like to throw my politics and philosophy into some of my addressing, and none of this is scripted, as most of you know. None of this is even really planned or laid out. I usually have some form of subject direction, but if I go into some long spiel or rant, there's a shtickle of just improvisation in that. And I enjoy that aspect of it, not having it be canned. I oftentimes find listening to stuff on YouTube, it sounds like an automatic robot voice reading a script, which sometimes it is. You know, sometimes it is. You can talk about the mispronunciation and the way they chop up syllables and words, that was done by a robot. And I pride myself in the fact that we are kind of a free-thinking channel, and that a lot of my thought processes are just connections of thoughts and ideas wrapped up with some historical context and just my life's experiences. And there was no plan as a teenage boy in Canada to grow up and to become an ambassador for black music in America. That certainly wasn't on my landscape. If you had told me in my 40s I'm going to be DJing for hundreds of black folks every weekend, I'd be like, nah, that's never going to happen. I didn't even know that music when I was a teenager at all. I was listening to Motley Crue and Pantera. Those were my favorite bands. Then I got into Grateful Dead and the Beatles and the Stones. And it was a slow process to get to the great funk bands and R&B bands, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, The Earth, Wind and Fire. That stuff was a process. And then as a DJ, you kind of delve deeper into that stuff because it's so fun. And then jazz kind of was that next evolution of that process. And I think for most people, jazz is kind of part of their evolution of growing. It's kind of a great place to end up as a collector of music and as someone who loves music. I think it contributes to a lot of jazz fans being the intellectual snobbish person that I know I was for a time, and I probably still am at times. But I also see that snobbery and elitism is what keeps a lot of people outside the jazz walls. And that's the one thing I think this channel has tried the hardest to break down, is that it's exclusivity, that if you're not hip enough, you can't be in this building. And jazz doesn't require the depth of understanding and musical passion that most of us have, because there's a lot of it that was very superficial and very popular and very accessible, and a lot of it's just fantastic. Yet we get so little exposure to it, and so many people who are outside of jazz never really hear anything but, the stuff that's challenging, because that's what we all promote based off our own experiences. But like I said, it's been a great experience for me. I've learned a lot from a lot of you guys, absolutely. I value a lot of my conversations and dialogue, and those of you who know and have experienced, a lot of us message outside of YouTube on Facebook Messenger or email, text, or whatever, and that degree of interaction for me pushes someone into that next level of being, and more than just an acquaintance, but like a friend. And so I've gained friends through this channel. I'm proud to say on both sides of that pond. I got friends in Japan who I speak with on a regular basis, and it all helps to broaden your experience and your knowledge and your comprehension and even your empathy towards other people's experiences. Jazz is one of the great languages that is spoken in a form of code, but yet it still can speak to and minister to all people. And that's what it did for decades. During the Depression and the war years, jazz was a great medication for the pain of the difficult years that people were going through. And the pandemic was something I never imagined going through in my lifetime, but I'd rather go through that than World War II. Those experiences of that generation were so much more difficult. And all in all, my life's been pretty much surrounded by what my mother prayed for as a child, was peace. She was born in London in 1945, and her parents, of course, were raised, and her grandma talked about the blitzes and pulling down the blackout curtains in London and the sirens going off and going down into the subways and the bunkers, and the horror of that came across through my grandmother's face speaking of it. And my mom was a young child, but she was still mortified, and often, especially as young children in the 70s, just was like, I pray my children never have to go through something like that. And so here I am at 50. For the most part, we've lived in fairly solid peace and solid stability in the Western world especially, which has often come at the expense of many other parts of the world. But that's the nature of empires and the global economy that we live in today. And it's always been a facet of how the world works. You have one place depressed, so another place can be suppressed, and it's that oppressed people that always exist that usually have the moral compass and usually have the authority to speak about what justice should look like. And I think that's the real message I found in jazz that was empowering to me. It was not just about that crazy, dizzy improvisation without purpose. It was always a music of a people that struggled so greatly and suffered through so much pain and indignation. And I'm sure some of it was just embarrassing as a people to be put through such suffering on such a regular basis, and to worry about your children's lives every time they leave the home. It's got to be an exhausting walk of life. And having been through some tough times myself as a family in my teenage years, as a teenager, rebelling against my parents' evangelical beliefs, being the prototypical preacher's kid, spending a little time in local jails, just being a ragamuffin child of the streets, you know what I mean? It was part of the whole process for me. But I think all of it's been part of where my empathy stems from. Having been under the boot of someone on a very small scale, it still allows me to have the empathy to understand when people are under someone's boot for generations or centuries, and how that gives them a place to speak about what justice should look like. And whether it's the milk of the promised land, the milk and honey, or whether it's simply the joy of the black community finding a place to celebrate and not focus on the struggle, that's empowering. It's overcoming. And overcoming struggle is really the linchpin of all of our lives. It's really what brings us all together in one common bond, is that all of us, despite our class, despite our race, despite our belief systems, despite our locale, there's always a struggle for everybody on some level. Psychologically, spiritually, physically, hunger, food, disease, war, all kinds of things afflict us, including the depression of today's youth. And maybe this will give them a song to sing someday. I hope that this generation of kids finds a direction, but boy, there's some troubling trends in terms of people being attached to their electronics so much that they've put self aside to fulfill the promise and look of a virtual avatar. And it makes the Matrix seem much more real. That we're kind of here to feed the machines at this point. And they no longer service us, we service them and keep them part of our daily lives and ritual. So I'm not going to go on too long today, but I just want to express how much I'm thankful for all you people. I love so many of you dearly. It's been a wonderful journey for me. I just love the exchange of thought and idea, and I find a lot of us in our conversations find a lot of very stimulating things to say and think. And I'm thankful that I've been able to inspire and encourage a lot of people to dive into jazz, and that I've found a place to share my voice during the pandemic, especially when you didn't have that interaction. That interaction here was of infinite value to me. And so I want to thank jazz as well, because it's been a big part of my journey these last 25 years. And as my knowledge has grown and my passion for it has grown and my connection to it has grown, my understanding of it has grown, there was no plan set out for me to be someone who talked about jazz on YouTube. It was never part of my vision. That was something I was prodded to do by others, including Ken McAuliffe. And it just became another facet of my life that, like I said, I never would have envisioned or imagined, but I certainly value it greatly. And I want to thank you all again for being part of this journey. And if I had a birthday wish, it's that we can see jazz continue to grow in the landscape and the minds of the next generation. You know, may it continue to find an audience, and may that audience be broader than just simply that pressings audience, that collectibles audience, the audience that doesn't value the Ming Voss for what it tells them about the Ming Dynasty. They value the Ming Voss for how it makes them look to their friends and in their friends' eyes. You know, I mean, I think if you're a descendant of the Ming Dynasty, or if you were one of the actual people of that time, to see your heritage being treated in that kind of a way, as a monetary pledge pin on my lapel, and no insight into who these Ming people were, I think that's just such a misinterpretation of the past. And there's a real difference between being a collector of antiquity and being an archaeologist, as I've said numerous times. And the guy who collects the mint heritage pieces and puts them on his shelves for his guests to marvel at often knows very little of the story behind where these artifacts come from and what it tells them about those people. If you're not getting what this artifact says about this group of people, you're kind of missing the point for me. And an archaeologist with pottery shards can learn so much about a group of people from that broken record of clay. And that perception, that empathy, that willingness to delve into their psychology and their philosophy and their spirituality and their ways of living. it's more tangibly related to us than we realize. It's part of reality. Reality is the opposite of society. Reality is the extension of all things, all cultures that have ever been or will be. Society is a slice of reality. Every society compressed into time is reality. And it's a very empowering, encompassing way to see it, because that means I'm entitled to live as anyone in the past has ever lived, or anybody in the future may choose to live. I don't have to be dictated how I live by the society I'm born into. And that society can be very limiting in what it enables us and empowers us to do or be. So I hope that, if nothing else from this channel, more people can delve into the archaeological, paleontological, I can't say that word. I'm even going to try again. But just that introspection into the people who made the music, more than just, look at this showpiece I have on my mantle. And it's all wonderful and great to have a showpiece, and even the archaeologist who collects pottery shards would be thrilled to find an intact artifact. So it's not about denigrating the artifact. It's about trying to perceive and learn as much as we can from these artifacts and recognizing that an old pressing that's very good plus, plays just fine, has a little water damage on the jacket, can tell you as much, if not more, than a modern reissue that's perfect and immaculate. But I think we don't allow ourselves to open up our minds to see and hear the echoes of the past. And I hope this channel has helped people to broaden that introspection into the music. I mean, that's my birthday wish, is that people can dive into the music beyond the pressings and the type of jacket that they use and how shiny the veneer is. And that stuff has a place, But if we're going to talk about a Ming vase, let's delve into what the Ming were about and what that dynasty accomplished and what their legacy is and what this tells us about their level of skill and their control of fire and how well people must have been fed to have the leisure time to create these great arts. I mean, there's a lot you can learn from a simple piece of pottery. There's a lot you can learn from a simple record expressing the blues and the condition of my soul. So much more than just the musical notes and the ability that someone's technically ability and virtuosity is a great thing, but it's more powerful when it's a byproduct of necessity versus someone's ego just trying to display how great they are. That to me loses my interest very quickly. All those great rock guitar players that are just I never felt it. I'm not sitting here to listen to your ego express how great you are. It doesn't really do it for me. And when jazz gets that way, I'm just like, some of that late 70s, 80s, like ECM stuff, there's a lot of really impressive playing that's very devoid of soul and spirit to my ears. And other people who I speak with on a regular basis feel the same way. And yet, a lot of people who love that stuff will denigrate an Eddie Lockjaw Davis record. That when I put on Eddie Lockjaw Davis, I just get to feeling it. I'm like, oh man, he's got something on his mind today, And it's somewhere between chasing that sex and just trying to overcome the gloom of the situation I'm involved in. That to me is inspiring. That to me is what I cling to. That's what jazz has meaning to me for. And when I take Chuck D's message from the Public Enemy days and Curtis Mayfield from the 70s and the Impressions and A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke, and I process that message that was really connected through decades, and I apply that to what these jazz cats were experiencing pre-civil rights, it's enough to make the hair on my arm stand up. And I think that's enough to be excited about. I think it's enough to get on my pulpit and preach sometimes. Like, there's meaning here. Mr. Armstrong, one of the most important Americans to ever have lived. And I want to finish this off by expressing my love of Armstrong. How great he was at taking a piece of music and teaching all of us the blues. And his inflections, his guttural groans, his added syllables, his ad-libbed improvs vocally Musically, it's all that, oh, I'm playing this song, but I feel a little bit of this right now, so I'm going to stuff that in there. That's the blues. The blues is impressing yourself upon somebody else's art sometimes, or even just a chord progression. And that bending of the note and the whammy bar and that little feel that you threw in there, that was an ad lib expressing your soul and your condition. And it's funny how when I listen to rock so much today, I can really hear the guys that hear the blues and feel the blues versus the guys that are just about composition and the ego of my ability. I was listening to some Bon Jovi, believe it or not, last week, just for nostalgia's sake as I approach 50. And Richie Sambora is a blues-driven player. As much as ZZ Top, I was impressed by the level of his blues soul. And his harmony vocals with John Bon Jovi are just incredible. Like, it really is what makes those songs stand out. And I've been trying to think of another hard rock band from that era who had that great second vocal to really make those songs just crawl into you and feel them. Of course, Jovi's a great kind of second generation of Bruce Springsteen's working man blues in a way. The sorrow of struggling as a dock worker in the New Jersey longshoreman opposite of New York, where all the manufacturing went to New Jersey and all the docks went to New Jersey as New York cleaned up their harbors and their waterfronts for other purposes. Those stories became ingrained in the people of the New Jersey Garden State. And that's the element of the blues in itself. The hardworking white American, black American longshoreman. You know, and so when you hear Springsteen or Bon Jovi expressing the struggle of the working man, that's the blues. And especially when you hear those guys throwing those little bits of feeling in there that are not scripted or not written, they're not part of the chart. There's a little bit of, I got to get that out right there. David Gilmour from Pink Floyd. The way he'll be playing a song, and all of a sudden he'll bend those strings down and then let it come back up. And his tonality, it's the blues. And I hear it in so many facets of music, that element of improvisational expression of self. And Armstrong is the progenitor. He's the creator of all that essence of that might be a song you've written and it might be about that. But as I perform it right now, it's about how I feel in this skin today, right now, with an immediacy and a freshness and an honesty that is just an incredible thing. And it taught everybody else how to sing. It taught everybody else how to play their instruments. There's no person more of a genesis point for the modern vernacular of music than the great Louis Armstrong. And for all the innovation of Ellington and Monk and Parker, it's clear Armstrong's impact is so universal. And anytime you hear a player or a singer throw a hell yeah in there, or a that's what I'm talking about, just those little expressions of feel, it really is a harbinger back to the great Louis Satchmo Armstrong, who to me is a saint. He deserves knighthood. Sir Louis Armstrong. We don't have a court here in this country, so he'll never be in service of the king, per se. But the man deserves a Medal of Honor, an Ambassador of Peace, Purple Heart. He was such an important figure in the American landscape for half a century. He changed the hearts and the minds of men. He came into white America's homes before Jackie Robinson, before all the great soul singers and R&B singers and black comedians, before all the innovations that happened in the later years of jazz. Armstrong was that first real threshold that attempts to stitch together what's been torn apart by greed and history and ugly nature of man. And mankind does have an ugly nature. We all have elements of it within us. but we all also have elements of nobility and integrity within us as well. And it's a choice we make twice, 3 times a day. Which path do I want to be on right now? Do I want to do the right thing or the wrong thing? No one does the right thing all the time. No one does the wrong thing all the time. No race of people is right or wrong all the time. No nation is right or wrong all the time. We all have infinite choices and opportunities to do the right or the wrong thing. And if we can do the right thing as often as possible, if we can bat 700, that's a good life. And to me, Armstrong was a guy who batted 800. He always found the opportunity to do the right thing, the noble thing, the less selfish thing, to speak for his people, to speak for his country. He went on tours in the world as an ambassador for not Black America, but for America, and made America look better than it was to a lot of people. Behind the Iron Curtain, in Africa, Europe, he was everywhere. And he's representing America, showing an America that was only existing in potential. And I think people left their visitations with him. I mean, it's like sitting with the Pope. It's an honor to spend time with Armstrong. Even if he's just on stage wiping his brow, if you got to witness that in person, you saw the Pope. You saw a very important man. And when Armstrong reached out to the world and said, "This is the America I dream of, and I'm going to present my country as the place that I know it can be someday," convincing a lot of these people that America already was that. That takes a big man. That takes a big man to think that I can be the forgiveness by being the person that my soul tells me I need to be. And so much of that healing starts with Armstrong. So much of that coming together, the celebration, the joy of this great life. Armstrong was the foundation that so much of this American fabric has been stitched upon. And so many artists have taken that fabric and stretched it in a new direction, in a different way, and added to the quilt. But you're still stitching the fabric of Armstrong. You're still singing behind the beat and acting coy. You're still changing a few words to change the meaning of something. And was it the song "I'm So Black and Blue," where it was really about a broken heart, and when he sang it, it became about the racial makeup of this country and the struggle within. That simple changing of a few inflections had such impact. And Armstrong never performed a piece without somehow inflecting himself upon it, reinventing the piece as he performed it. And that's the essence of so much of modern music today. The essence of a great guitar solo is embodied in Armstrong. The essence of a great soul singer throwing some hallelujahs and all that stuff, that's Armstrong. The releasing of my soul's angst and finding joy in that release, that's Armstrong. And I think that's a valuable thing I want to carry with me into my last decades, is to be joyful, to use this music as a way to overcome the doubt, the pain, the struggle, the fears, and to continue being strong and an ambassador, not just for the music, but for the well-being of mankind. And we all can do our part in that effort. None of us can do what Armstrong did. You know what I mean? That gate, that doorway has already been opened. But we can latch onto it and hold empathy for others and express our sorrow through joy and celebration and art. And we can value the history and the ability of a group of people to overcome through art. And I think that's just a message that never we should be tired of speaking and hearing. And my love for Armstrong, it's palpable. When I see him on a TV and I hear him speak, when I'm listening to him play, I see his face somewhere. I just feel a welling up of man, if we could all be more Louis-like. If we could all embody a little bit more Louis Armstrong in our daily walk. Be more forgiving of our fellow man. Instead of judging as we walk into a situation, try to find a way to bridge that gap. Because the powers that be want us divided as much as possible. That's the end result. The end game here is to keep us on different pages so there's no unity in terms of what we want and desire, so that none of that can ever be accomplished or achieved because we're too busy infighting. And I was telling my friend Brian the other day, it's amazing how Americans from the left and right are really quite in harmony when it comes to foreign policy, what they think about China, what they think about Cuba, what they think about Russia, what they think about North Korea. But domestically, they're divided into infinite camps where there's absolutely no unity. I mean, that's how perfect and unified the control is. You will think alike in terms of foreign policy because we need unity on that front. And it's amazing how unified liberals and conservatives feel about most of those issues. Mention Kazakhstan to the average American, and they're going to get a similar, unless they've been there. You know, I mean, sadly, Kazakhstan's going to probably stir up images of Borat for most of these people nowadays, which is a striking misrepresentation of Kazakhstan, although wonderful in all of its delightful inactions. But let's just, be thankful for this journey. So 50, I'm ready for you. Let's do another 25 trips around that sun of ours. And again, thank you for everyone for being part of this. And let's just remember the beauty of what Armstrong and his legacy is about. And you can hear, even in pop singers, that little bit of extra, not scripted, not on the page. When you go off the page, you're doing Armstrong. And it's a really omnipresent thing in music today. Every bent note, every whammy bar, every expression of a solo and fill. Zach Wilde, one of the great guitar players of this rock blues era, the last 25 years, who made his living kind of playing with Ozzy 90s era. Also has this great band, Black Label Society, which I don't know very well, because I kind of grew out of rock by then. But he's actually doing this tour with Pantera coming up, which I'm excited about because I was a big Pantera fan. I don't think I'm going to go see it, but Dime and him were friends, and if anybody can play Dimebag, it's Zach Wilde. But Zach Wilde has so much feel and blues that is often misconstrued as virtuosity, but a lot of it's just feel. When they wrote the songs, a lot of what he's playing is not in there. It's the chords and the rhythms. It's his on top, those flares of expression that express the blues. He's rooted in the blues. And maybe even listening to the heavy metal from my childhood these last few days, I've just been amazed by how often a little bit of blues right there. Didn't know you had that in you, Mick Mars. Oh, that's the blues. Didn't know that was coming from you, And so it's constantly bashing you across the head, the power and the value of the blues. And it's something to celebrate. And it goes so far beyond the simple 12-bar blues or the simple progressions that we think of as the blues. The blues expresses itself in so many ways. And most of the great jazz artists are coupled with the duality of improvisation and expression via the blues and charts and arrangements and virtuosity. It's a great balancing act. And I don't like the artists that go too far into virtuosity and composition because it becomes stale and stagnant and rigid. I like that expression and freedom of Armstrong. And it's partly why, for me, classical music doesn't stir me. It's so composed, it's so rigid in its form, that there's very little room for the innuendo and expression of self upon a piece of music. You play it as it's written. You read the chart and you play it verbatim. And it seems very sterile to me for that very reason, is everything is in its place always. And there's no one playing with the edges of dissonance and bending something, so it's a little bit sour and guttural and coming back up to the root. I love the blues. It needs to make me feel something. So again, thank you all. I appreciate ahead of time all your birthday well wishing. I appreciate every one of you. Let's continue to grow as a people, as jazz fans. Let's continue to dig into the archaeological aspect of the pottery shards and hear the story, hear the message. And let's not just put the vase on our shelf to show to our friends so they can see how cool we are. I think those Ming vase people will be very disappointed by that outcome. Don't have an Egyptian death mask in your study unless you know where Thebes is. You know what I mean? Unless you have some comprehension of Angkor Wat. You don't want to have, and again, there's not a lot of trinkets to take away from a place like that. The jungle destroyed most of that stuff. So one thing great about the desert preserves antiquity. Unlike the tropical climes where it's hard to find what we left 50 years ago, let alone 500 years ago or 1,000. So I'm wrapping it up right there. I appreciate you all. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you want to support the channel, send a birthday wish, go to my Patreon. You can, as little as $3, $4, $5 a month, you can help out the channel and help me grow my revenues to help support me keeping this channel going. It does take a lot of time and effort to keep up the content, and I try to keep it as fresh as I can, as interesting as I can. I've been trying to add a lot of photographs and interesting documentary style pieces I've been trying to do. Sadly, I feel like I'm losing viewers. The deeper I get and the more interesting I get, the more documentary I get, the less views those episodes seem to get. And then I say, oh, here's a new tone poet, and I get 3 times the views. And so it's a bit frustrating, but at the same time, I got to do what I feel and what I believe in. And I got to do what I think is important to talk about. And to echo something that's already being spoken about on so many channels, it has limited value to me. I know I can always add something to the puzzle insight-wise and in terms of some of what the music's about, where it came from, who the players are. I feel like I can always add something to it. So I'll continue to do that stuff when it feels right. But the episodes I did on records that I had no plan on buying, they felt very forced to me. And they got good viewership, but it just wasn't something I was really thrilled about doing. So thanks again. Y'all be safe. Have a great day. Happy birthday to me. Be blessed. 50, here I come. Peace.